Chapter 13, The Brain, a broadcasting and receiving station for thought. The 12th chapter to Riches. In study by author the Dr. Alexander Graham Bell and Dr. Elmer R. Gates, it was concluded that every human brain is both a broadcasting and receiving station for the vibrations of thought through the medium of the enter in a machine fashion similar to that employed by the basic principle of radio and other wireless communication. Every human brain is capable of picking up vibrations of thought released by other brains. In connection with the above statement, compare and consider the description of the creative imagination as outlined in chapter number 6 on imagination. The creative imagination is the receiving set of the brain which receives thought released by the brain of the others. It is an agency communication between one's conscious or reasoning mind and four sources from which one may receive thoughtful stimuli. When stimulated or stepped up high rate of vibration, the mind becomes more receptive to the vibration of thought that reaches it either from the outside sources. This is a stepping up process that takes place through the positive emotions or negative emotions. Through the emotions, the vibrations of thought may be increased. Vibrations of exceedingly high rate are the only vibrations picked up and carried by the other from one brain to another. Thought is the energy traveling at an exceedingly high rate of vibration through which has been modified or stepped by any of the major emotions vibrates at a much higher rate rather than ordinary thought. It is this type of thought that passes from one brain to another through the broadcasting machinery of the human brain. As far as intensity and driving force are concerned, the emotion of sex stands at the head of the list of human emotion. A brain stimulated by the emotions of sex vibrates at a much more rapid rate than it does when the emotion is quiescent or absent. The result of sex transmutation is the increase of rate of vibration of thought to such pitch that the creative imagination become highly receptive to the ideas it picks from the other. When the brain is vibrating at a rapid rate, it not only attracts the thought and ideas released by other brains, and it also gives one's own thought that feeling which is essential for those thoughts to be picked up and acted upon by subconscious mind. Thus, you will see that the broadcasting principle is the factor through which you mix feeling or emotion with your thoughts and pass them on to your subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is sending station of the brain through which vibrations of thought are broadcast. The creative imagination is the receiving set through which the vibrations of the thoughts are picked up from the ether. Along with these important factors of the subconscious mind and the creative imagination, consider now the principle of autosuggestion, the medium by which you may put into operation your broadcasting station. Through the instruction described in Chapter 4, you were definitely informed of the method by which desire may be transmitted into monetary equivalent. Operation of your mental broadcasting station is comparatively simple procedure. You have to but three principles bear in mind and to apply when you wish to use broadcasting station: the subconscious mind, creative imagination, and autosuggestion. Stimuli through which you put these three principles into action have been described. The procedure begins with desire. The greatest forces are intangible. The depression of 1930s brought the world to the very borderline of understanding the intangible and unseen forces. Through the ages that have passed, people have depended too much upon their physical senses and have limited their knowledge to physical things that could see, touch, weigh, and measure. We are now entering the most marvelous of all ages, an age that will teach us something of intangible forces of the world about us. Perhaps we shall learn as we pass through this age that the other self is more powerful than physical self we see when we look into the mirror. Sometimes we speak lightly of the intangibles, the things we cannot perceive through any of our four senses, but we should never forget that we are all controlled by unseen and intangible forces. The whole of humankind has not the power to cope with nor control the intangible force wrapped in rolling waves of the emotions. The human mind does not have the capacity to understand the intangible force of gravity which keeps this little earth suspended in midair and keep us from falling from it, much less power to control that force. All of us are entirely subservient to the intangible force which comes with a thunderstorm, and we are just helpless in the presence of intangible force of electricity. Indeed, many of us do not even know what electricity is when it comes from or what its purpose. Nor is this by any means the end of our ignorance in the connection with the things unseen and intangible. We do not understand the intangible force and intelligence wrapped in the soil of the earth. the force which provide us with very morsel of food we eat, every article of clothing we wear, and every coin we carry in our pockets. The dramatic story of the brain. Last but not the least, we all are brought boasted culture and education, we understand little or nothing of the intangible force, the greatest of all intangibles of thought. We know but little concerning the physical brain and its vast network of intricate machinery through which the power of thought is translated into its material equivalent. However, we are now entering an age which we shall yield enlightenment on the subject. Also, already, scientists have begun to turn their attention to the study of this stupendous thing called a brain. While are still in the kindergarten stage of their studies, when they have uncovered enough to know that central switchboard of human brain, the number of lines which connect each brain cell with another equals to the figure 1 followed by 15 million zeros. The figure is so stupendous, said Dr. C. Judson Herrick of the University of Chicago, that astronomical figures dealing with the hundreds of millions of light years become insignificant by comparison. It has been determined that there are from 10 billion to 14 billion nerve cells in the human cerebral cortex, and we know that these are arranged in definite patterns. These arrangements are not haphazard, they are orderly. Recently developed method of electrophysiology draw off action currents from very precisely located cells or fibers with microelectrodes, amplify them, and record potential differences to a millionth of a volt. It is inconceivable that such a network of intricate machinery should be in existence for the sole purpose of carrying on the physical functions incidental to growth and maintenance of the physical body. Is it not likely that the same system which gives us billions of brain cells, the media for communication one with another, provides also means of communication with other intangible forces? In late 1930s, the New York Times published an editorial showing that at least one great university and one intelligent investigator in the field of mental phenomena were carrying out organized research through which conclusions had been reached that parallel of many of these described. And the following chapter, the editorial briefly analyzed the work carried out by Dr. Ryan and his associates at Duke University as follows. What is telepathy? A month ago, we cited on this page some of remarkable results achieved by Professor Ryan and his associates in Duke University from more than 100,000 tests to determine the existence of telepathy and clairvoyance. These results were summarized in first two articles of Harper's Magazine. In the second, the magazine that has now appeared, the author E.H. Wright attempts to summarize what has been learned or what it seems to be reasonable to infer regarding the exact nature of these extrasensory modes of perception. The actual existence of telepathy and clairvoyance now seems to some scientists enormously probable as the result of Ryan's experiments. Various recipients were asked to name as many cards in special pack as they could without looking at them and without other sensory access to them. About a score of men and women were discovered who could regularly name some of so many of the cards correctly that there was not one chance in many a million of their having done their feats by luck or accident. But how did they do them? These powers, assuming that they exist, do not seem to be sensory. There is no known organ for them. The experiments worked just as well at distances of several hundred miles as they did in same room. These facts also dispose in Mr. Wright's opinion of attempt to explain the telepathy or clairvoyance through any physical theory of radiation. All known form of radiant energy decline inversely as the square of the distance traversed. Telepathy and clairvoyance do not, but they do vary through physical causes as our other mental powers do. Contrary to widespread opinion, they do not improve when the percipient is asleep or half asleep, but on the contrary, when he is most wide awake and alert. Ryan discovered that a narcotic will invariably lower a percipient's score, while a stimulant will always send it higher. The most reliable performer apparently cannot make a good score unless he tries to do his best. One conclusion that Wright draws with some confidence is that telepathy and clairvoyance are really one and same gift. That is, the faculty that sees a card face down on the table seems to be exactly the same one that reads a thought residing on another mind. There are several grounds for believing this. So far, for example, the two gifts have been found in every person who enjoys either of them. In everyone so far, two have been of equal vigor. Almost exactly. Screens, walls, distances have no effect at all on either. Wright advances from this conclusion to express what he puts forward has no more than the mere hunch that other extrasensory experiences, prophetic dreams, premonitions of disasters, and like may also prove to be a part of the same faculty. The reader is not asked to accept any of these conclusions unless he finds it necessary. But the evidence that Ryan has piled up must remain impressive. In view of Dr. Ryan's announcement in connection with the condition under which the mind responds to what he terms extrasensory modes of perception, I now feel privileged to add to his testimony. My associates and I have discovered what we believe to be the ideal conditions under which the mind can be stimulated so that the sixth sense described in the next chapter can be made to function in a practical way. The conditions to which I refer consist of a close working alliance between myself and two members of my staff. Through experimentation and practice, we have discovered how to stimulate our minds by applying the principle used in connection with the invisible counselors described in next chapter. In doing so, we can, by process of blending our three minds into one, find the solution to great variety of personal problems submitted by my clients. The procedure is very simple. We sit down at the conference table, clearly state the nature of problem under consideration, and then begin discussing it. Each contributes whatever thoughts may occur. The strange thing about this method of mind stimulation is that it places each participant in communication with the unknown source of knowledge definitely outside his own experience. If you understand the principle described in chapter 10 on the mastermind, you of course recognize the round table procedure described here as being practical application of the mastermind. This method of mind stimulation through harmonious discussion of definite subjects between three people illustrates the simplest and most practical use of mastermind. By adopting and following a similar plan, any student of this philosophy may come into possession of the famous Carnegie formula briefly described in the author's preface. If it means nothing to you at this time, mark this page and read it again after you have finished the last chapter.